You're good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first meeting of spring 2022. Before I get the formal meeting started, I have an announcement I'd like to make. So we've had a recent retirement again in our roads department. Trevor LaRue grew up in the village of Lancaster and is one of 3 boys born to Vince and Patricia LaRue. Prior to joining the township, Trevor operated his own tree removal business and has extensive knowledge in forestry. Trevor worked with Rapco Equipment for 9.5 years, selling construction and safety supplies to firms in the Ottawa region, and also worked for 2 years with Ultra McDougall Trucking as a truck driver. Trevor started his career with the township in November of 2000. He was hired to work in the roads department as a casual truck driver / laborer. In 2008, he transitioned to a permanent full-time position as a recreation facility operator. Trevor was a familiar face to all the residents at the Shireland Recreation Center for 9 years. In 2017, Trevor returned to the roads department where he finished out his career before his retirement. Trevor, we wish you and Carolyn all the best in this next chapter of your life. Best wishes and thank you for your service to South Glengarry. Thank you very much. Call the meeting to order. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Jaworski and seconded by Councillor Lang. Here's, Be resolved that the March 21st, 2022 council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7:02 p.m. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. I'll ask everyone to stand for the playing of our national anthem. Thank you very much. Approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments, Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, we have several items that are being moved to other business for discussion. So the first item being item 7AC, the staff report for electronic meeting participation. We're going to move to other business as there isn't a formal resolution with that one this evening. And from information only, we have item 7DI, which is the information report on the water loss update requested by Councillor Lang and Deputy Mayor Jaworski. We have item 7DL, which is the Ministry of Natural Resources Bulletin requested by Councillor Lang. And item 7DP, the resolution concerning support for Ukraine requested by Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Okay, thank you very much. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry accept the agenda as amended. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, moving on to item 5, approval of the minutes. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that the minutes of the March 7th, 2022 council meeting, including the closed session minutes, be adopted as circulated. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to 5A, sorry, pardon me, 6, presentations and delegations. We have the OPP here this evening, Sergeant Gloria Yu. Mr. Mills, did you want to introduce the Sergeant?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to introduce Sergeant Gloria Yu from the local Lancaster detachment. Council will recall in the past, perhaps if you remember that the OPP used to come regularly to council meetings on a quarterly basis to update on happenings, what's going on, maybe to ask for support. We have a new district commander, Mark Hemrick, who reached out to the CAOs, and we thought it would be a really good idea. So welcome, Sergeant Yu, and we look forward to hearing you tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, everyone.
Are you trying to share your screen, Sergeant?
Yes, sorry.
Madam Clerk, does she have the ability to do that now?
Yes, she should be able to, the permissions are enabled for sharing.
Okay. All right. Is everybody able to copy what I'm, my transmission?
We can see you and hear you, but I don't have anything on screen.
Okay. I actually don't have anything to be able to provide on the screen at this moment, but I just want to thank everybody for having me this evening on behalf of Inspector Hemrick and the command staff of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. Just introduce myself. I report out of the Lancaster OPP detachment, just transferred here from Southwestern Ontario, and I'm very, very happy to be meeting all of you tonight and to speak on behalf of SD&G Command. Would you like me to get right into the billing report and the record management reports that I'm able to provide?
Yeah, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my first town council meeting, so everybody just kind of bear with me as to what I'm able to provide. And of course, I can email Kelly or whoever would be the best person representative to disseminate this to town council members if required, on behalf of the South Glengarry Town Council. So I have a report here that's based on our calls for service, which is our billing summary report for the Township of South Glengarry from January to December 2021, as I was asked to provide a year-to-date report in regards to some billing categories, and then also some stats in reference to violent crime, property crime, drug crime, and some clearance rates and whatnot. So I can start off with the billing categories if you'd like to go through each one individually. Okay. So it's a comparison between 2021 and 2020. And when it comes to the billing categories, they're split up into the following. There's violent criminal code, property crime violations, other criminal code violations that do not include traffic, drug possession, drugs, statutes and acts. So that could be federal statutes or provincial statutes. anything that's operational for the township in South Glengarry, and then also billing categories for traffic. So from January to December last year, the totals were 1,385 in comparison to 2020, which was 1,292. And the time that is measured is an average of hours when it comes to a call. So for example, if there was say like a mental health call or an assault, okay, that has taken place involving intimate partners or whatnot, it's an average of hours that is calculated by Canada Justice that bills an average of hours per category. So for example, if they take a 4-year average of, say, it takes this many hours to complete a mental health call, that's how it is billed. Okay, it's not the OPP just coming up with that number. That number actually just comes from Justice Canada, and they take an average of 4 years provincially as to how long it would take to complete those calls, and that's how that's billed. The year to date, when it comes to the weighted hours, 2021 was 6,423.2, as compared to in 2020, the year to date weighted hours was 5,933.3 hours. So approximately an increase of about 490, I guess you would say. I know that just looking at the statistics themselves, there were some things that were observed from the calls themselves, and also from the billing categories. For example, the number of intimate partner violence and also when it came to mental health calls increased when it came to COVID, right? And you put everybody in the same household with minimalized number of resources within the community. That trend was actually Canada-wide, not just within South Glengarry, but within the entire country. And that trend was observed to be substantiated in every jurisdiction. When it came to the number of traffic violations, I guess you would say, limited traffic traveling from one area to the other because of the pandemic restrictions and whatnot. I know that the traffic numbers, Inspector Hemrick has committed to the Police Services Board and also to South Glengarry Township, that he is passing on, and also to every member of the OPP, the importance of traffic safety and being visible out there, and making sure that every member of the community is safe, whether they're traveling on highways, waterways, or trails, and that there's definitely a commitment from Inspector Hemrick to make sure that those numbers are going to increase over the next year. Any questions about that so far? I know it's quite difficult to just kind of digest the numbers there, but can provide you with the actual breakdown of the record management system for South Glengarry based on what I'm looking at here.
No worries. Thanks very much, Sergeant Yu. It's good to get the statistical data. Are there any questions of members of council? I know in the past reports that we received were traffic stops, domestic DUIs, stuff like that was what we were presented. But it's great to get this stuff in detail.
I do have those numbers when it comes to
Okay.
the breakdown of violent crime, property crime, drug crime, and clearance rates, if that's what you'd like. I have that report here as well, if the council pleases. Yep.
Yep.
So the important thing to note when it comes to these statistics is these stats are collected using our niche records management system, okay, which is the electronic database that the OPP captures all of their occurrence reports, okay. And when it comes to, say, for example, there was a domestic assault, right? The statistics are captured by the clearance that the officers use that are reported to Justice Canada. For example, if there was a domestic assault that stemmed from a family dispute where somebody in turn, there was an intimate partner violence where a male or female accused was charged, then we would have the stat of assault, domestic violence, and family dispute, if that makes sense. All three of those in one occurrence, okay? So it's the numbers are not the number of arrests. It's important to note. So when, for example, here for violent crime from 2020, there was a reported number of 18 sexual assaults. And in 2021, 24 sexual assaults. Not to say in particularly that there were 24 arrests that were made in 2021, but there were 24 sexual assault occurrences that were reported, right? So just to go through each one, the violent crime statistics from 2020 to 2021 for murder, there was no change, 0. Other offenses causing death, 1 in 2020, 0 in 2021. Attempt murder, 0 for both years. As mentioned before, sexual assault, 18 reported occurrences in 2020 and 24. In 2021, an increase of 33.3%. And with assault, 2020, there were 21 occurrences reported, and in 2021, 25, which is an increase of 19%. Abduction, 1 in 2020, 3 in 2021. Robbery, 1 for 2020, 1 for 2021, and other crimes against a person, 24 in 2020 and 21 in 2021. So the totals of violent crime that occurred in 2020 were equal to 66, and in 2021 it was 74, which is an increase of 12.1%. One of the explanations, as I had mentioned earlier, we had seen an increased trend in intimate partner violence and assault and sexual assault in occurrences, and that would explain in some way why those numbers reflect that way. Moving on to the property crimes, broken down into arson, 1 in 2020, 0 in 2021. Break and enters, 12 in 2020, 7 in 2021. It's a decrease of 41.7%. Just looking at that number myself, I mean, everybody was home for the restrictions of the pandemic, which may have decreased some suspects from actually attempting a B&E on a residence or commercial place. Theft over $5,000, 21 occurrences reported in 2020 and 16 in 2021. Theft under 5,000, 48 in 2020 and 58 in 2021. Possessed stolen goods, 18 in 2020, 7 in 2021. And fraud, 78 in 2020, 101 in 2021. And mischief to property, 2020 we had 30 occurrences reported and 27 in 2021. The total breakdown there, 208 property crimes in 2020 and 216 in 2021, with an increase of 3.8%. Now, I just wanted to mention for the fraud occurrence, for the property crime, not sure if you're aware of the Desjardins fraud that had occurred last year. The frauds increased from 78 to 101. One of the reasons for that was an international fraud that had taken place. And when it came to possible victims reporting those incidents, initially what they had done is they reported in South Glengarry, because that's where they reside and that's what they need to do to get a police occurrence. However, the jurisdiction was through the federal, through the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center. So when they were deemed to actually be a victim, where funds were actually released or lost, they were advised to call back a second time to report to the OPP that they not only had a fraud occurrence, but they were also a victim of lost money and theft. So that there was a duplicates there in occurrences, and that would account for some of those numbers there. Any questions about those so far before I move on to the drug crimes?
Okay. Yep. Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
And I'm sorry, Sergeant, if you've already said this, but are these statistics something that you can provide like in writing, either for this, like this report or for a future report?
So I was advised by the inspector that I can provide you guys with the record management system report and the billing summary report to South Glengarry Town Council members. I can send it to all of you by email, or if it's easier for me to send it to, for example, Kelly, to disseminate to everybody to make sure that nobody's missed. I would love to do that. Not an issue at all. It's just, I know it would be easier for you to obtain these statistics instead of hearing me rattling off the numbers. And my apologies, with me being away on training this week, it's just been difficult. As you can see, I'm at home, right? So my apologies for that.
No worries, Sergeant. You know, the next presentation that you do, we could get the information ahead of the meeting. And then we could, you give us a high level report, and then we could ask questions and, having time to sift through it,
Yes, and be able to pop it up on the screen there so you could actually see it. Next time, I promise to be Zoom savvy.
No worries. I do have a question for you, though.
Sure.
Do you have any information about the mobile response units coming to this area in regards to, I believe at the county level, we approved funding for a Deputy Mayor, what is it, a crisis manager, or I forget what the word.
The mental health nurse, you mean?
Yes, that's what it was.
OPP, yes. the mobile crisis response team.
Yes, so I don't, for this meeting, have specific information for that, but I can provide the council with an update that I can obtain from the inspector in command. I do actually work with directly with the mental health response team and the MCERT, the mental critical response team. I remember them saying that there was going to be a renewal that was coming soon in regards to the partnership between our officer and the nurse. But once I get that information, I can forward that on. Yeah,
great.
On my to-do list for sure. Yeah. Would you like me to continue on with the drug crime and the next? It's basically from the clearance rates for violent property crime and drug crime, and then criminal record checks. But if that's something that you'd like me to just submit in
Yes.
writing to the council, I can definitely do that. Yes.
Sergeant, that would be wonderful. In the spirit of time,
Yeah.
basically we allot 10 minutes for your presentation. And certainly we definitely appreciate you coming and starting us off. And we look forward to hearing from you on a more regular basis as to these statistics, and being able to review them ahead of our meeting will allow us to engage in a dialogue back and forth. And so we certainly look forward to getting some information in regards to the nurse that and the mobile crisis unit for the next time. So before the sergeant goes, is there any further questions? Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Warden. Just in thinking for the future, when you come back, if there's anything in terms of your insights, in terms of things we should be aware of, or ways that the township can be proactive or assist, those are always welcomed. Things like we've invested in having some of the signs that indicate people's speeds as they go through, our hamlets. I don't know if that's, the thing where your insights come in onto whether we should have more of those, or, that kind of thing, where we can work together to be as efficient as possible. I'd love to hear your insights on that going forward.
Absolutely, Deputy Mayor. Working at a Lancaster detachment directly, I'm always keeping an eye on any local traffic complaints or traffic initiatives that we take the time to pay attention to. Any of those that are brought up and that are sent out as an alert to our members in the form of a be on the lookout or time permitting, please complete and then add to the report so we can track the stats going forward. I don't have any to report today that have been collected in the last few months. As you know, we have been very, very attentive to what happened over the last couple months with regards to the Freedom Convoy and the Cornwall Port of Entry. However, I just wanted to assure the council, if you're not already aware, that any costs that were related to the Freedom Convoy are directly billed to the provincial model and not to the municipality. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Good. All right, last call for questions. Seeing none, thank you very much, Sergeant Yu, for your report. And we certainly look forward to you coming back to us in the future. And thanks again.
Thank you very much for having me, everyone.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, great. Moving on to new business, staff report 7AA, proposed animal control bylaw. Ms. Brunet.
Good evening, Council, and through you, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to take a moment just to open up my PowerPoint here. And can I get a nod of the head if you see this?
Yep.
Wonderful. Perfect. So this evening I'll be discussing the proposed animal control bylaw. It's been long ado. We spoke about it, I believe, March of last year regarding the licensing, and this is the bylaw that will be able to implement this. So let's get right into it. So the Township of South Glengarry's planning, building, and enforcement staff, as well as council, showed interest in the alterations of our current animal control bylaw to reflect the types of regulations and enforcement that we'd like to see in our community to best serve the constituents. The current bylaw is Bylaw 1107. It was done in 2011. And the Municipal Act allows us to create bylaws to regulate the care, control, and licensing of animals. So these are strategic goals. You are all very familiar with these. This bylaw will be able to align with the strategic plan in order to improve internal and external communications. It's innovative to create the new bylaw to best suit our municipality and opportunities that we have, strengthen the effectiveness and efficiency of our organization, improve quality of life in our community, and lastly, excellence and trust being the values. Okay, so right now, the biggest thing about the whole bylaw is we are proposing the removal of the township issued licensing. We've discussed this back in March of 2021. Council directed staff administration to remove the actual tags that the township provides. However, this does not negate the fact that owners will still be required to have an ID tag on their animal. It just doesn't have to be purchased through the municipality. This way here, they can go to local vendors and they can, or PetSmart, places like that, and purchase their ID tags. This tag will be required to have the name of the dog on it and the contact information of the owner, whether it's an address or a phone number. They can have either or. And the tag can also state if the dog is microchipped. We can't just leave it, or we can, depending on what council would prefer, but the microchipping, it's easier to know if the tag says microchipped on it versus no tag or collar at all. And then we have to assume or guess that there is nothing, or send him to a vet to be scanned to see if there is a microchip. The animal control bylaw will have this in place if council approves of it. And due to the removal of this dog tags, it says that there's an increase of $2,800. However, that's not actually accurate, since the line budget is still remaining the same in the end. It's just that we will not have a income anymore, which was acknowledged by council in 2021. We are looking at introducing a electronic registry for dog owners at no cost to the ratepayer for dog seized, or anyone who just wants to input their dog information into our system. And that way there, if I find a dog on the road and I see it's a golden retriever, I can go search golden retriever and find these. And then if it has specific markings or color, things like that, I can at least try and track down who it is, in addition to our social media. Animal control bylaw, we speak about the tethers and collars. So specifically in these sections listed here, the best practice based on the 10 municipalities and cities that I was looking at, which was provided in your staff report, the best practice is 2 meters for the length of a tether, which would be the leash. Our municipality has been using 3 meters, and I believe 3 meters would still best suit our municipality. 2 meters is quite short. But also with 3 meters, it still allows for the owner to obtain control of the dog if it gets too excitable or it's reactive. They can still have the opportunity to maintain that dog. Written permission. So this is regarding the use of long tethers. There's training leashes that you can purchase at places for recall training. They can be ranging from 25 to 50 feet in length. That length is not suitable for use in public environments, since you will not be able to obtain your dog's control if needed, if something occurs, because not everyone knows what dogs are reactive to what situation. So if you would like to use a long tether, you can, if it's on your own property, no problem. If it's on someone else's property, you would need to obtain written permission. Initially, this bylaw, our current bylaw, stated that verbal would be permitted. However, I run into a couple of situations where the owner of the dog says, well, I have permission to have my dog off the leash, but the owner of the property is the one submitting the complaint. So I would like written, the staff administration, based on council's opinion and guidance, would dictate whether or not the written permission would be the way to go. Lastly, something that we don't speak to or silent on in our current bylaw is the use of choke chains, pronged or pronged collars, or other type of control usage equipment for dogs. These are not recommended based on all the other, on the best practice bylaws that I researched, as well as through the OSPCA. However, some vets recommend them if the dogs do not have, if the owners don't have reasonable control over their dogs. Therefore, if the vet recommends having the use of a prong collar, for example, then they would be permitted to use one. But if I receive a complaint saying this dog is being neglected or abused because it has this type of equipment on them, That way if they have a vet recommendation, I don't enforce this section. This is the most exciting thing I have to present. The Township of South Glengarry will be looking into having a leash-free dog park based on the Recreation Master Plan. With this being said, I took the opportunity to include it in our bylaw. We currently do not have one, but if and when we do get one, then it's already regulated in the bylaw and we don't have to come back to council and amend it. If per se, we never have a leash-free dog park, there's no harm in having this section in the bylaw. So in this section, we talk about the owners must be present. The owner cannot be a child. So if you're sending your 5-year-old, or if a 5-year-old is going to the park with the dog, it can't leave the dog off leash inside the dog park because that 5-year-old won't be able to gain control if something were to happen. In addition, if something significant occurs, an incident that's significant occurs and the police gets called out or I get called out, a child, we are not legally able to enforce anything towards a child. The next section would be no more than 3 dogs per person. This is due to the control aspect. Once again, if something occurs, we want the owners to be able to retrieve their dogs in a timely and efficient manner. More than 3 dogs has shown that it's not able to be controlled efficiently. And we only have 2 eyes. Observing 4 dogs inside of a leash-free dog park might get a little stressful. In addition, they have to have the proper ID, which goes back to section 3.1. So the license that they can purchase from wherever, as long as it has the dog's name and phone number or address of the owner. Lastly, the dog must be vaccinated and fixed and older than 6 months of age. This goes back to best practice of the municipalities and cities that have leash-free dog parks and enforce these rules. This is what they all include. It goes back to ensuring that everyone is in a safe environment and a little more carefree. Barking. This is something that I deal with on a regular basis throughout the summer. We currently have it in our bylaw as consistent and persistent barking. However, it's not defined. So it was more of the intent that the bylaw officer had at the time of writing the initial bylaw in 2011. However, in this bylaw, we've now defined it. So consistent and persistent would mean it is a period of 10 minutes a time, more than 3 times a day, at least twice a week. This is what we've already been enforcing with our bylaw, but now we have the definition in there. So when constituents have questions or would like to know what consistent and persistent means, we have it there for them. Now in regards to excrements, we're talking about dog poop. So residential, limited service residential and estate residential properties, the owners will have to pick up dog poop within 3 days. These areas are more condensed areas where houses are closer together or closer to the road. You don't want to have to be walking about or even your neighbor going into your driveway and seeing a bunch of dog poop on the side. So it'll be picked up every 3 days based on this bylaw. Anywhere else, so rural or agricultural, where the dog can roam for acres long and poops, we're not expecting the owners to go find that poop within 3 days. Or even find it at all, it might be gone. But in areas where it's more rural and the houses are still close enough together, we are stating 7 days, especially if the dog finds its poop central right beside the neighbor. And once again, this is all based on complaints. So there has been a substantial amount of criticism from residents regarding the lack of consequence following a dog attack, which occurs on private property. The proposed enforcement, changing from location-based to severity-based, will allow staff to enforce orders when a significant event occurs, or rather a near-miss event occurs. Following many requests, and in addition to all this, we've had many requests for muzzle order removals. So when an order is issued following a dog attack, and the dog, in the situations I've encountered, it has 6 months left to live or less, they've been coming and asking, can I remove this muzzle from my dog? He can't even run anymore. Why do I still have to wear it? Well, with this proposed bylaw, they'll have the opportunity to appeal the muzzle order or dangerous dog order to have the muzzle removed. And there's going to be 2 different ways to appeal this. So firstly, we'll go into the dog attack. So I'll read the scenario and then we'll walk through what happens. Bernie, a dog, is out for a walk with his owner down Anywhere Street. Bernie's owner falls on the ice and Bernie goes running. Tyrus, a neighborhood dog, is tethered on his own property on Anywhere Street. However, he gets attacked by Bernie and is deceased. We hope this never happens, but accidents do happen. This is Bernie's first attack on record. So we can see here, Bernie was walking on the road, the dog ran onto another dog's property and killed that dog on his own property. So Bernie attacked Tyrus on private property. Therefore, a notice of attack is issued regardless of the severity. That's based on our current bylaw. Because it happened on private property, I have no authority to issue a muzzle order, even though Bernie caused another animal to die. Our proposed bylaw will be based on severity. So in this situation, Bernie killed Tyrus by attacking him there and without any provocation. Therefore, dangerous dog order will be issued. This is the differences between our current bylaw and the proposed bylaw. Current bylaw says if it's on private property, regardless of how severe it is, a notice of attack is issued. Unless there's more than one, then you get a dangerous dog order. If it's on public property, then it's an immediate dangerous dog order. Even if the dog just ran up to you while you were walking down the street, barking, growling, and decided to paw you, then that would be an immediate dangerous dog order because it happened on public property. Our proposed bylaw states that if there's no contact or if it's just scratches, a notice of attack will be issued. If it's a bite, regardless if it's one bite, many bites, many deep bites, or if it's a deceased animal or person, then it's an immediate dangerous dog order. This is all based on Dr. Sophia Yin and Ian, his last name's defeating me Ian Dunbar. They have a canine bite level, and this is what it looks like. Level 1 is a pre-bite, which is the growling. Sometimes it could include scratches. Level 2 is the near bite. So it could leave a bruise on the person's leg, which is most of the time what occurs. And then we have a level 3, which is where it punctures the skin, but not deep enough for the whole canine to go in. Level 4 is very serious. The canines have gone in, the dog was latching on. 5 is multiple bites with the dog latching on, and 6 is unfortunately death. So if we go back here for a moment, the first one is a notice of attack, which is the bite and pre-bite, or near bite, I should say, the bruise. Then anything above that is an immediate dangerous dog order. Going into the appeals, you receive a dangerous dog order and you think it wasn't my dog, or my dog shouldn't have a muzzle, and you want to appeal this, you have 7 days, if you look on the left side of the screen, to appeal, and then it goes straight to council once we receive the appeal. Or on the alternative, it's been 2 years or more and your dog is bite free, there's been no incidents, you can appeal it, so as long as you provide proof of obedience or behavioral training and a letter from that trainer stating that your dog is not likely to attack again. And then this appeal would once again go to council. Based on the best practices research on those 10 municipalities and cities, it all goes back to council because this bylaw went through council. And if staff or administration were to say, no, this is the order of the muzzle, this is what you received, they would go to council regardless. Animal control bylaw, we talk about rabies. There is a mention of it in the current bylaw, but this addition is a little more in depth into what a constituent would have to look out for. So an attack occurs. This is the only time that the municipality gets involved with rabies. If an attack occurs, the dog that attacked must quarantine for 10 days and the owner must watch for symptoms. There's 2 types of rabies, which is something I learned recently through the EOHU. There's dumb rabies, which shows that the dog becomes depressed and tired and tries to hide in isolated places and may develop paralysis. Dumb rabies occurs in dogs that are usually the opposite. So if the dog's usually hyper and goes around and always wants to play, and then all of a sudden becomes this dog, he might have rabies. Furious rabies is the alternative, where the dog becomes extremely agitated and aggressive. This is more of the stereotypical rabies. periods of excitement, which changes into periods of depression, and may attack objects or other animals, and includes 9 himself. So this is what the types of symptoms that an owner would be looking for. If any of these symptoms develop, they immediately must contact the Eastern Ontario Health Unit as well as the municipality, and we provide the dog or the person that's been attacked with the appropriate measures. We have our dog pound section. This is currently in the agreement contract we have with Kevin Castleman, who's our animal control officer and pound operator. These operations include the impound, redemption, and adoption policies. So for impounding, it's a minimum of 3 days for redemption. It clearly says minimum because that is what the legislation states. It has to be a minimum of 3 days that the municipality or the pound will keep the dog prior to making any decisions. If no redemption has happened, the dog now becomes the property of the municipality or the pound. So now the pound may sell, adopt, or euthanize the animal. Euthanization is really only used if the animal is very sick or injured, and the pound operator believes that this is the time that the dog has to be euthanized. Redemption, we speak to fees as required. So you come back, you know that's your dog, you get your dog back, you have to pay redemption fees. And the dog is required to leave with a valid license, which is the tag, the name, and the owner's information. And adoption is another option, which is at the officer. So the pound's discretion. Application is accepted by the pound, including the fee, and is once again required to have a valid dog tag ID. Prohibited animals in the municipality. This is to work with our current zoning bylaw, because it'll be removed from the zoning bylaw once everything is presented to council at the time for zoning. So we're moving it into the animal control bylaw to remain consistent. There will be no reptiles or any wild animals tamed or domesticated in any building or structure, which is currently as indicated in the zoning bylaw. And on the right side of your screen, it says none of the following animals are permitted in residential zones. So no ox, bull, horse, sheep, goat, pig, or cattle. The proposed bylaw reflects the intent and standards of the township staff believe would better reflect the needs of the community and assist in bylaw complaint investigations. The goal of the municipality is to be fair, friendly, while delivering services to the community that can maximize their quality of life in our unique township. Our enforcement remains the same. Step 1 is always conversation and education. Step 2 is the notice or an order. And step 3 is cost, fees, and fines. And that is it for my presentation. Does council have any questions? And through you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks very much, Ms. Prunet. It was a very detailed presentation. There's a lot to get through. So we are going to be doing a first and second reading tonight. And what I would encourage members of council to ask any questions this evening of Ms. Brunet, but send it to her in writing, and then we'll be coming back for the third reading at our next meeting. So with that being said, are there any questions this evening of members of council? Deputy Mayor Jaworski, then Councillor Lang.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Warden. I have a few questions. I'll try not to get too overboard here, but so the main focus of this is dogs, but is there a reason, or is it dealt with elsewhere? Other types of loose animals, even including loose livestock. Is that intentional that it's not included, or would that be dealt with in another way?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jaworski. So loose livestock and other types of situations like that is actually already legislated through a provincial act, which states that the municipality is required to attend, if not the police, to go and contain these animals. So that's a provincial legislation that's already existing, and therefore the municipality wouldn't create a bylaw for it. They could if there's additional policies, or if we had our own private pound in this location where we would bring these, like let's say the North Glengarry had that pig that was at large for the longest time. you know? So in those situations, the bylaw officer went, tried to find the pig, took the pig and brought it to their local pound. We currently don't have a pound for livestock. Therefore, it's having a bylaw would not work too well. At this moment, we are very fortunate that everyone knows each other. So typically when livestock is out, it's, hey, it's Joe Blow down the street, we'll get their llamas back in, or alpaca, which is something that's happened. So that's where that comes in. And the OPP does assist with that as well. In regards to other types of animals, we could legislate cats. That's something that wasn't too, not in favor from council nor administration, but it's always an opportunity. Other than that, that's where I stand, where the legislation stands.
Okay. And if I could have a supplemental?
Yes.
Yeah, I know some areas have a lot of issues with cats, but I have not yet had a resident talk to me about cats. So I say we don't get involved in that if we don't have to. How about hunting dogs? How are they impacted at all in this, or not?
Once again, through you, Mr. Mayor, hunting dogs would be impacted by this. So if they're hunting on a property within South Glengarry, they would need to obtain that written permission saying that the dogs can be at large on that property. So whether at large means on that 50-foot leash and without being holed, or just free, which is all hunting dogs. They're let go and they listen to their owner's commands. But that would have to, the written consent would have to be obtained, which typically occurs when someone goes and hunts on someone else's property anyhow. So that would be involved there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sorry, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Mr. Renee, for the presentation. And like was said, very detailed, lots of reading. I have 3 points. I had 2 originally, then Deputy Mayor Jaworski brought up a 3rd one. As far as, and I'll do it first, the hunting dogs on private property, a written permission, would a text message be fine? And I just asked this because it's happened to me a few times that the guys have come through looking for coyotes in wintertime with hunting dogs. They send me a text, say, you know, we would be going to your property. I said, all right. I usually answer them with a text message. Would that be enough to satisfy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Councillor Lang, I believe that based on the intent of the bylaw, that would be sufficient. So as long as I can prove that phone number is from the owner of the land.
Okay, thank you. My other 2 original points, under part 7, as far as when we impound a dog, do we or could we post anything on our social media? And just like a picture or something, say we have this dog, just because 3 days isn't a long time, and just to give the people more of a heads up.
Once again, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Lang, that's for sure our intent. And currently it does get posted on Facebook. However, it's not our Facebook because we're a shared pound. We operate through the South Dundas pound, and therefore it gets posted on South Dundas lost pets and adoptions, which what the municipality can do is 1, monitor that page more frequently and immediately share it onto ours, or take that information and post it directly to our Facebook. What occurs as well is when an animal is at large, we encourage residents to immediately contact either us or the dog catcher when they lose their dog. And this is not for fear of having to pay redemption fees, but because the likelihood is that dog is actually at that pound already. It occurred to members of my family. So we can definitely add it to our social media.
I think that would be a good idea, and because most people aren't going to know to look under South Dundas, so
Correct.
I think it's helpful. My other one was under part 8, and the section that says that no reptiles or any wild animals, even if domesticated. And I'm just wondering, I was thinking about what this might all include. I mean, if someone has a pet turtle, I think that would be against the rules. Sometimes kids will have those geckos, this sort of thing. Birds, I don't see anything in there about birds. So lots of people have pet birds. I don't know all the different kinds. Fish, rabbits, hamsters. So I wondered if it would be possible that we would put something in there that would say something along the line that any animal that was legal to be sold, you know, at a pet store or something, in our jurisdiction that we would be all right with. Because I don't think we want to, I think what we're hoping to try to do is get rid of exotic animals and, you know, this sort of stuff that, you know, people are wanting to have monkeys or stuff that they're not supposed to have. So I'll leave that with you. I'm not sure the best way to word it, but I just don't want to make, you know, the little guy down the road that's got a pet turtle, you know, be in violation of our bylaw.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can comment on this, Councillor Lang, that is definitely something that was brought to my attention, especially since I did own a turtle while I was a student and I didn't know it was illegal. So I know that the majority of the reptile portion goes back to, I might be putting my foot in my mouth, but like snakes, like the boa snakes and things like that you see at large in the city of Ottawa, like, you know, can eat a small child, things like that. Those are more of the concern. So I will look into that to find out what type of wording we can include to, because snakes are legal to sell at stores, but maybe have a little more comprehensive section to discuss what you were stating, if that's council's guidance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Nick. And I agree with Councillor Lang. I think maybe having a little more definition to reptile and stuff, because again, they're legal to purchase. I don't know why you would ever want to, but they are legal to purchase. So are there any other questions of council tonight? Final Councillor Luck, and then final to Deputy Mayor Jaworski, as this is the first and second reading.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Ms. Brunet, for a very detailed summary here. When I just have a first comment about the microchipping, and it's just more of a concern in the sense that from personal experience, when we got our dog through the SPCA, we went through all the steps of, you know, registering the microchip. And then springtime came about 6 months later and the dog wandered off. And lo and behold, we went searching everywhere. We called up every single vet, and sure enough, one of the vets had her, and the microchip was still transferred to the SPCA and not to us. When we called the SPCA, they said that the ownership never got transferred and they're backlogged. So if there's anything that we can do about having like the dependency of the microchip versus the name tag, I know that you list the three, and that's great. Just a word of caution. And then I guess my question to you is if you could explain the electronic registry that you have in mind.
Perfect. So through you, Mr. Mayor, regarding the microchipping, that's why they're still going to be required to have a tag. Whether the tag says like, my name is Zeus, and this is my owner's phone number /microchipped. So it's not the only thing. We still have to be able to contact them by means of phone number or address. But if they're microchipped, because the microchip contains much more information than that tag could ever contain. So that's why they're always going to have both, not ever just microchipping with no other type of identification. Now, in regards, I forgot the second part of your question.
No problem. I was just wondering about the electronic registry.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Perfect. So Bylaw is actually going to be using a software that includes an electronic method that directly inputs complaints and also allows residents to review the status of their complaints by like an ID number and everything. So with that, there's also a section that includes fillable forms that will like populate itself in an Excel spreadsheet. So you would go on to whatever the website is and then say register dog, and then you would write like Zeus, German Shepherd, purple collar, something of the sorts, and your phone number, contact information. And that way there's just a general log, and we can also keep track of the amount of dogs in the municipality for statistical reasons. And if your dog is ever seized or at large, that way if we have a tag and let's say the number got faded off or the address, or it just says Zeus in big letters, we can go and type Zeus in and then find the dog's name Zeus. And it might be a trial and error, but we're also sharing it on Facebook and other social media. But it's just another option that could be presented.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Through you,
Yep.
Mayor Warden. quick question about like leashing when dogs are off leash. And this is just sort of like a scenario, just because I've seen this recently, comments around this, is if someone has a dog on a leash and they have control of their dog and a dog off leash in the public, not in the off leash park, comes at them, and then you have like an altercation, essentially because an off leash dog is coming at you and the other dog felt the need to defend itself. How does that, I'm not really clear on how that falls in this proposed bylaw.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I do believe I read the same thing on social media. So what occurs is what we have to determine during our investigation is provocation. So what was the mitigating factor that occurred here for that attack to happen? So Councillor Jaworski, you're walking your dog down the street and I'm walking with you or against you, and Fern, my dog, gets off leash, or I lose control and he attacks your dog. Well, my dog is the one at fault here because he got off leash and without any reason or fault of his own, he attacked you. Now, if Fern gets off leash and runs towards your dog and your dog attacks Fern, the mitigating factor here is that Fern was no longer in control, under my control, and attacked and went towards your dog, provoking your dog. Therefore, the mitigating factor is my dog, and the fault now comes back to, it was my dog that ran towards you. Your dog still attacked though. So in these situations, a notice of attack would likely, depending on the severity, because it all comes back to severity, but what the likelihood would be is a notice of attack that states, with provocation, your dog attacked. So a dangerous dog order might not be the answer, because my dog provoked your dog to do the damage. So I'm still liable, because at this point, the likelihood is that dog was off leash. So I would receive a notice saying my dog was off leash and I need to maintain my dog. And you would receive a notice saying your dog attacked, but it was provoked, so you're not going to get an order to muzzle.
Okay,
because
thank you.
Protecting you or protecting your property, whatever the situation may be.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Final call for discussion. All righty, seeing none. Moved by Martin Lang, second by Rebecca Luck. Be it resolved that staff report 34-2022 be received, and that bylaw 23-2022, being a bylaw to regulate the care, control, and licensing of animals within the township of South Glengarry, be read a first and second time this 21st day of March 2022. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have a good evening, Council.
Yeah, thank you. Very detailed report. Moving on to 7AB, True Love Zoning Amendment. Miss Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to take this opportunity to highlight a few important parts to my staff report before we get to the proposed recommendation. So this property is located at 20263 at County Road 25, which is directly west of the settlement area of Green Valley, only a few properties west. The subject property is 39.5 acres in size. It's currently developed, containing a single detached dwelling, as well as a detached garage workshop type building. The southern portion of the property is currently being farmed, and the northern portion of the property is forested with some swampy wet areas. The purpose of the requested zoning amendment was to rezone the subject property from rural to rural exception 18 to permit a campground. And I'd like to read the campground tourist definition to council. So campground tourist means an area of land providing short-term accommodations for tents, recreational vehicles, or campers, and may include accessory uses such as a laundromat, convenience store, sale of propane fuels, and recreational uses for persons using the campground, where a fee is charged or paid for such accommodation, but it shall not include mobile homes or a mobile home park. At this time, the camp is proposed to be created in 2 phases, with the first phase accommodating tents, trailers, and RVs and cabins for overnight accommodations. A septic system would also be required to accommodate the cabins, public washrooms, and for waste disposal as for the RVs and campers. And phase 2 could possibly consist of additional camping lots. A concept plan was submitted with the zoning amendment application. However, when an application is applied for, a final site plan is not required at this stage, as the purpose of the zoning amendment is to establish the use, not the site details of the layout of the proposed use if the amendment were to be approved. So I've pointed out in my staff report various components of the requested zoning that conforms to different sections of the official plan as well as sections of the provincial policy statement. And I'm now going to get to what is being recommended. So as you heard me just outline that the proposed zoning amendment was to create a site-specific zoning amendment, rural exception 18 to permit a campground tourist, including cabins for alternative accommodations. I am recommending that this application be approved, but that it be placed in a holding zone. The reason for placing it in a holding zone is it allows us to be very, very sure that what is being proposed at the time of development of the campground will meet the policies that are required at that point in time. So to be more specific, if council were to approve the zoning amendment this evening, it doesn't force the individual to proceed with developing the campground tomorrow. This individual could take years or months or many years to proceed with the development. And the benefit of the holding zone really makes sure that we're doing a second set of review to ensure that what's being proposed meets the policies. And you'll see in my staff report that I outline that at the time of development, we will want a detailed final site plan that's going to show the layout of the campground. Will show the proposed septic system location, the proposed cabin locations, making sure they can meet the required setbacks. We also want to ensure that the natural heritage features are being further reviewed and respected. We all know that there was a recent natural heritage strategy or natural heritage study that was completed, and the official plan has not been updated yet to accommodate that, that study. So at the time of development of this campground, if it were to be approved, then the individual can prove to both the municipality and the Rabies Region Conservation Authority that the necessary studies have been completed to ensure that we're not negatively impacting any of the natural heritage features on this property, if any. Also, you may have noticed in the comments from the Rabies Region Conservation Authority that they did recommend that consultation occur with the Ministry of Environment, Culture and Parks to ensure compliance with Endangered Species Act, and they must obtain a permit if that's required. It's not saying that there are endangered species on this property, but it's basically saying it's the owner's responsibility to ensure that what they're doing conforms to the Endangered Species Act, and therefore that's why they're recommending the consultation. Again, this is another example of the purpose of the holding, to make sure that the proponent is following all of the requirements at that time. So when we went through the public process, we held a public meeting as required on February 22nd, 2020. We did have an abutting property owner participate in this public meeting, and the abutting property owner did submit comments in writing, which I did attach to the staff report. And Mr. McDonnell expressed some concerns in his thoughts. He felt it was an inappropriate location, that it could impact upon tree cover, possibly on wildlife corridor and the natural heritage systems, and then potentially the expansion or the existing settlement area of Green Valley. Again, with placing this in the holding zone and require the developer to provide more detailed information will help mitigate some of the concerns that Mr. McDonnell has brought forward in the submission. Moving along, we did not receive any comments from the United Counties. However, we do know that the United Counties would be involved in reviewing the entrance if they move forward. And we did receive comments from the Rabies Region Conservation Authority. They don't object to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and did highlight some requirements that the applicant may have to do. So those are the items that I wanted to highlight for you this evening, Council. If you have any questions or any concerns with the proposed holding zone, I'm certainly happy to discuss it. And my recommendation is to approve, but in the holding pattern. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the detailed report, Ms. Haley. Are there any questions or comments of the members of council? Council or Deputy Mayor Jaworski?
Thank you through you, Mayor Warden, and thank you very much, Ms. Haley, for your report. I appreciate, with although this is a very sort of preliminary application, I appreciate the time and effort you've taken to analyze it and to present it to us. And I think what you're recommending in terms of having the holding designation makes a lot of sense, because I think that will do the best to mitigate some of the concerns of the neighbor as well, because as we know, the official plan, they are doing an update with regards to the protection of the natural heritage systems, particularly when it comes to the corridors and the linkages of the major features. And I think that was my understanding of one of the major concerns of the neighbor. And so I think that this way, I think those concerns will be addressed as well as appropriately. Also, I guess I wanted to point out, or just make sure I'm clear, that this piece of property is only what is south of the railway tracks. It doesn't extend, whereas the abutting property actually goes across, like they own north of the railway tracks. And my understanding of the features there, it's really what's north of the railway tracks that are what are more sensitive and more interesting from a hunting perspective, which is something that's mentioned in the report, whereas on the south side, it's much more agricultural or open fields. So thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haley. I had a question. As we're aware that there is a potential for this, well, it's inevitable, this land is going to be rezoned in the future. Will that affect this decision at all if this decision is approved this evening and eventually the new official plan gets adopted? Is this property grandfathered in now that if council approves this application tonight? Does that therefore permit this property to stay in that zoning and permit future development?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. And the answer to that is yes, and I'll explain why. Just to give a little bit of background, this property has been redesignated by the province of Ontario to prime agricultural land. When we received the application was received and processed while the application was still designated rural district. So if this is approved this evening, and if the zoning is changed to rural exception 18 holding, and let's say in a year from now, we're now doing our new zoning bylaw, and typically you want your zoning to match your official plan designation. So for example, if you're in an agricultural resource designation, you're going to be in an agricultural zone. Or if you're in a rural district designation, you're in a rural zone. So what would happen in that particular case is the zoning would not be called rural exception 18 holding. It would probably become, for example, agricultural exception 25 holding, that would then pull in everything that was approved by council and make it work within the new zoning for conformity to the official plan. And then let's say the property owner never went through with development, and it's now 15 years later, we're on another update of our zoning bylaw. At that time, that's when we would reach out to the property owner. And if it's still the same owner, the owner would have the ability to say to us, no, it's still a goal, or no, I've completely changed my mind. Or if it's an entirely different owner and the owner is saying, oh no, I'll never develop a campground, at that time, we would then put that property into full compliance with the official plan.
Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting. I just was curious about that. Are there any other questions of council? Seeing none. Moved by Rebecca Luck, second by Sam Actonel, be it resolved that staff report 35-2022 be received and that bylaw 24-2022 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3809, the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township of South Glengarry, to rezone the property legally described as part of Lot 2, Concession 9, in the geographic township of Schlottenburg, now in the Township of South Glengarry, County of Glengarry, PIN 671150-157, from rural RU to rural exception 18, holding RU 18H to permit a campground, tourist, including cabins for alternative Accommodations be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of March 2022. The Council of the Township of South Glengarry confirms that all comments received from the public were carefully and respectfully considered. However, they had no effect on the decision to approve this zoning amendment. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moving on. Pardon me. 7D. I apologize here. I've got not enough screens. Department no, I'm at the wrong spot. My apologies, guys. 7AC. Electronic meeting participation. Mr. Mills.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we are deferring item C to other business for discussion because there's no resolution on that item this evening. So we can skip over to item D.
Okay, thank you. 7AD. Physician recruitment, Glengarry Memorial Hospital. Mr. Mills.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight, I'm going to bring you a report about physician recruitment for Glengarry Memorial Hospital. Council will recall at the February 22nd council meeting, Dr. Nadia Kucherepa made a presentation to council outlining the recruitment of physicians. There are a number of vacancies, 4 in total to fill at Glengarry Memorial Hospital. The request from Glengarry Memorial Hospital was $5,000 per physicians as an incentive, one-time payment, and the physician would have to be in the area for 5 years. The analysis, the recommendation from administration is to support this in the amount of $5,000 per new physician. And the impact on the 2022 budget would be anywhere from 0, I guess, but all the way up to $20,000 and would be payable through township reserves. We all know that someone or families that don't have a family physician and how that can put a real strain on the family when they have to get simple things or if there's serious things that are happening. So I'll turn that back over to you, Mr. Mayor, for questions or comments from council.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mills. I certainly am in favor of this. I lost my doctor, and it would be great to have another doctor replace that office space. Are there any questions or comments of council? Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Sure. I'd just like to make a quick comment that this was, presented at County Council today as well. Dr. Kucherepa made a similar request, so I think, and it seemed to be favorably received. So hopefully there'll be a staff report coming back to County Council. Well, there will be also support, matching support also, because it was discussed a bit at length today that the amounts that we're putting forward are probably small and not competitive enough with the enticements in other areas. So having the counties join the pool will be beneficial.
Absolutely. Thanks for those comments. Moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report 37-2022 be received, and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the donation request in the amount of $5,000 per physician as a one-time payment for signing a 5-year contract, 5-year practice agreement to support the Glengarry Physician Recruitment Program. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moving on to 7AE 2021 council remuneration and expenses. Mr. Hudson. Mr. Hudson, did you, we're waiting for your report. Okay, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. We all had expenses billed out, mileage and,
Mr. Mayor, I'm back, I hope.
okay, perfect.
Okay, my apologies for that. Just some quick comments. In terms of background, this is a requirement through the Municipal Act to report before March 31, statement of remuneration expenses paid to members of council in the previous year. The information is presented as a staff report because our auditors prefer a resolution acknowledging that council has received the information. With respect to the grid of numbers you see before you, there's a few trends there that I think warrant a brief comment. One is the $144,000 total in the year 2020 to 2021, down to 119,000. That's a difference of about 25,000, and that's accounted for by two particular items. Mr. Prevost left partway through the year, and if you look at conferences and per diems, the advent of COVID and the use of Zoom and digital conferencing caused a significant drop in that cost for the year. That's noted in point 5 of the document. Nothing further than that, other than when I see acronyms, I like to be sure everybody knows what they mean. RRCA is Raisin Region Conservation Authority.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your report. Are there any questions of members of council? Seeing none. Moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 39-2022 be received and that the presentation of the statement of remuneration and expenses for 2021 be acknowledged. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moving on to staff report 40-2022, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, this is a staff report to recommend the award of our annual granular tender, which is to purchase granular to put on our roads. And this year we did it a little bit different. So we went out with one item for our roads, and that would be captured under our loose top resurfacing budget. And we added two provisional items, one for recreation to see what the price might be to put down granular onto our peanut line, and then the other for fire. So the quantities are under item number 4. So we went out for 40,000 tons of granular for roads. That includes 35,000 tons for our loose top resurfacing as approved through our budget, and an additional $5,000 for our capital projects. So if you'll remember at our last council meeting, I spoke a bit about the need for granular on our surface treatment program, and it was 6,100 tons that I'd estimated at the highest. So this 5,000 is kind of my buffer for that. We have 7,000 tons of granular M, again provisional for the peanut line, and 1,000 tons of granular B, I believe, for fire services. Our budget for this was $58,000. No, my apologies. $580,000, and the cost for item number 1 was well below that for the low bid. We received two submissions from Cornwall Gravel and Cocoa Group, and we are recommending that council award for item number 1, just for roads, to Cocoa Group, who was the low bid at $424,000, excluding HST. With the intent that if recreation and or fire wanted to pick up their gravel and granular in the future, they could do that through this award, but not being committed to at this time. So it would only be for item 1. And okay. I included, there's a map on, I think it's page 97 of your package that shows the roads that we'd be applying granular to. And if you'll remember, the roads working group had given us a schedule for A, B, and C class roads. And so we're looking at picking up areas that haven't had granular applied in the last 2 years, and then working towards that rolling schedule moving forward. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks very much, Ms. McDonald, for your detailed report. So I just want to make sure, so if this is awarded, those rates stand till the 31st of December, 2022? Am I to understand that correctly? And then if the Recreation Department and the fire choose to, need granulars, they'll get it at these rates. Is that correct?
Yes. And I have spoken with Ms. Servage briefly about the recreation one, and we're discussing how we can potentially fund that through our combined budget. So I think we'll be coming back in the future with some accounting excitement, let's say.
Okay, great. That's good to know that they come in under budget, because certain areas of the roads departments at the counties have come in over budget. So it's good. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, thank you, Ms. McDonald, for the report. I'm very happy to see the price at $10.60 when we paid $10.45 last year, 15-cent increase. With the price of fuel and everything being where it is, I think it's quite a good news story. I would encourage recreation and fire that if I'm not sure where the fire one's going, but the recreation, I'm quite sure by the map looks like it's going to enhance our peanut line from Williamstown to basically County Road 19 or somewhere along there. So I hope they take advantage of that, because those prices come in at 9 something, which is even cheaper than last year's gravel. I don't think if we put that off a year, we're going to see prices like that again. I suspect it's going to go up quite a bit, but it is very good news to see it come in. So just a very minor increase, and I'm hoping that we take advantage of it.
Yep, great. Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Just quickly, I just want to thank Ms. McDonald for the report. As usual, I want to express appreciation for the map and clearly showing what we're doing, and your goal to get on top of that rolling schedule, so that going forward, we'll have something very, very predictable and repeatable going forward. Thanks.
Perfect. Any other comments? Seeing none, moved by Martin Lang, second by Rebecca Luck. Be it resolved that staff report 40-2022 be received, and that the council, the Township of South Glengarry, award procurement number 08-2022 for the supply and placement of granular materials to Coco Paving Inc. in accordance with their submission in the amount of $424,000, excluding HST, for item 1, 40,000 tones of granular M at the unit cost of $10.60 per ton. And furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all appropriate documents. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moving on to staff report 40-2022, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, this is a staff report to recommend the award of the Second Line Road Bridge Rehabilitation, which is our structure number 30043, located, did I write it in here? Oh, wait, on Second Line, just south of Concession 7. So this was a structure that was up for rehabilitation last year, and for reasons we're now awarding it now. So the procurement closed on Wednesday, February 23rd, and we received 7 submissions, which is exciting. When I went back through our history, our last rehabilitation of a bridge received 1 or 2. So getting 7 is very competitive and really good for us. You can see that the prices ranged quite a bit, almost $150,000 between the low and the high bids. We had our engineers from McIntosh Perry review all of the bids and provide us with a bit of information, and their report is attached to the staff report. Their recommendation and ours is to award this to the low bid, who is also Coco Paving, for $498,000, $318.60. They do have the experience necessary to do this work, and they are close, and there was no reason that they couldn't. I will note under number 5, we accepted all submissions, although four of the tenders did not include all three addendums, and we didn't deem complete. So they were all accepted, and Coco Group did acknowledge addendum 3. So if we go to the impact on budget, you'll note that we are over. This is over our budget for this project. The budget was $410,000, and we're about 90 over that. In our budget, we have an additional $510,000 to put towards bridge work this year. And at my update last month, I had listed the 6 bridges that we are hoping to do this year. So if we award this and if prices continue along this vein, council will likely have to make a decision at our next kind of award at which of the other 5 structures we may want to do, or if we're able to fund them more. But at this time, I would recommend proceeding with this structure since it was on the books for last year. And it has been identified in our Ontario Structural Inspection Manual reports that it is needing of repair.
Okay, perfect. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the presentation, Ms. McDonald. It's definitely one of our structures that needs to be done, and it's definitely something that's been maybe neglected over the years. Some of these structures that'll need rehabilitation, and going forward, there's a lot more, and it's better to be proactive and have a lower cost before there's a failure. So I completely agree with you. This needs to be done. The concern as far as going over the budget at this point, if you look at the fuel price difference between when we did this budget back in November and today, it's very substantial, and we're going to see a price increase again the 1st of next month. So I don't see the cost of doing these structures going down anytime soon, and all they've done over the last 4 years, or the 4 years we've been here, is rise. So I wouldn't anticipate getting a deal waiting a year. So I think we should do as many as we can as they need to be rehabilitated.
Yep, I agree. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Luck.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have 2 questions, if possible. I was wondering, Ms. McDonald, if you can confirm under item 8, it says that the low bid has acknowledged all 3, but then in McIntosh Perry's summary, it says that they acknowledged only 2 addendums. I just want confirmation.
So we reached out and have written confirmation that they have acknowledged addendum 3, and it does not impact the bid as submitted.
Okay, and I guess my follow-up question is, 7 proponents and 4 of them didn't acknowledge all 3 addendums. Do we have any feedback as to how they missed the addendums and what was in the addendums? Like, is that going to impact their level of effort in the works that they complete?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize for missing the through you, Mr. Mayor, and my previous answers. I'm a work in progress on that front. So it is my understanding that MERCs, we can't push out the addendums, that subscribers or people who are taking the bids have to manually check that they want to receive notifications of when the addendums come out. So if they haven't checked that box saying, yes, we want to receive addendums, we really have no way of pushing it to them easily. Further to that, some people or some contractors don't pull them from MERCs, they pull them from our website. So even if we did somehow blast email at all the bid takers, we would miss anyone who hadn't gone through MERCs, which is likely something to consider for any future procurement bylaw updates. And in terms of whether or not it would impact their bid, the 3rd addendum wouldn't. It potentially missing addendum, and the addendum 2 in this case may have, if I remember what's in it correctly. So addendum 3 was clarifying a minor point, and addendum 2 was a bit more meaty, and I believe addendum 1 as well. So that's kind of the insight I can provide on this.
Okay, thank you.
All righty, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, moved by Rebecca Luck, second by Sam McDonnell. Be it resolved that staff report 41-2022 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry award procurement number 06-2022 for the rehabilitation of the Second Line Road Bridge SN 30043 to Coco Paving Inc. as per their submission of $498,318.60 plus HST. And furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all relevant documents. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. And moving on to staff report 42-2022, Ms. Servidge.
Good evening, Council, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This report is regarding the Lancaster Legion deck project that was part of the 2022 budget. The project includes the removal of the existing deck and ramp and the installation of a new deck made of composite boards, railing, and an accessible ramp. Some railing material will be reused from the original deck. The project is to be completed by June 1st, and construction is to take place no longer than 2 weeks. These requirements are to minimize the impact on the operations at the Lancaster Legion, and the intention of this project being completed for the majority of their patio season. The township received 3 quotes for this project. All proponents met the criteria of the project. The 2022 budget included $45,000 for this project. This was determined based on quotations provided in October of last year. Although staff factored in inflation when project planning, costs have continued to rise at a very high rate. You will see that all quotations exceeded the budgeted amount. So if council wishes to continue with this project, it is the recommendation of staff to award the project to Eco Era Construction for $52,849 plus HST, which would involve the township going over the anticipated budget by approximately $8,000.
Okay, thank you very much. I, for one, certainly support this. The Legion is such a valuable asset to our community, and I think going with the composite, the deck will last quite a long time. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd agree to that as well. I don't see any need to postpone the project. Again, anticipating price of materials to drop, the inflation rate just keeps rising on it, especially on the composite materials. And no, it's definitely something that's well merited, especially given our local Legion's involvement in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be it resolved that the staff report 42-2022 be received, and that the quotation submitted by Eco Era Construction for the installation of the Lancaster Legion deck project be awarded as per their submission of $52,849.05 plus HST, and furthermore that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all applicable documents. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right. And I believe this is new business in regards to the council meeting report. Mr. Mills.
Mr. Mayor, through you. Just before I start the report on electronic meeting participation, I want council to reflect back on the past 2 years. It's kind of hard to believe it's over 2 years now that we've been doing, or about 2 years we've been doing electronic meetings. Certainly more than 2 years that we've been involved in dealing with the pandemic, and we're just getting through it now. Hopefully the worst of it's over. But I'd like to commend staff and council to this point for what we've been able to do as a group and to run meetings as we have. There have been some advantages to the video, and which we certainly need to continue. But we'll have our face-to-face meetings, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the meetings have been very efficient. We've had the community a lot more engaged because people can watch from home. It's an equity issue, so for people that can't get out, to the meetings. If there's video provided, it's great for them. I would say as a township have enhanced media reporting, because even if they aren't able to attend, they can watch it later that evening or the next night. In fact, there have been actual articles written that come out before the end of council meetings because the reporter is able to watch it, the meeting, and then report at the same time. And then we have video to go back to as well, that if we want to go back and check something, when we're not sure about the minutes, we can go back and check that. So that being said, in March of 2019, Bill 187 was passed, and basically that provided the ability to have electronic meetings and quorum, so that we could run that way. On April 6th, our own bylaw 5916 with bylaw 18/2020 to allow for council to hold and participate in electronic meetings, which we've done since then. On January 21st, the bill was passed in the legislature, Bill 197, to amend the act to allow for hybrid meetings, basically, and quorum to be declared if there was a combination of in-person and video meeting. The township has met electronically, but we're preparing now, and staff is working hard for meetings to start on April 5th at the Tartan Hall. The current procedural bylaw does not allow for a hybrid model of electronic participation, and we're currently equipped to include members electronically if council so wishes. So we're seeking input and direction from council to determine if an amendment is required to the procedural bylaw to allow for hybrid participation by council members. But these are some things that council needs to consider tonight and give us feedback on. We'll come back to it. The number of annual meetings which council or committee members could be granted to participate virtually. So that's number one. We need to consider if you would allow someone to go on to as many electronic meetings as they wanted, or there would be a limit to that. Some organizations do that. And that was pre-pandemic as well. So now we're considering if it's post-pandemic, how many meetings are you going to allow a member to attend electronically, or if you want to do that at all. What should be the method of voting? So raising hand, verbal, or e-scribe. Allowing members to participate virtually in emergency purposes only at the discretion of the chair. So we recognize certainly things come up, weather, family emergencies, work, travel. There's a whole number of items. We also have a number of committees. So the engagement of committees, everybody has their own story as to how busy they get, their family, their work, other things, travel. So do we want to have those in person, or do we want them to be hybrid as well? So we have to consider council meetings, committee of adjustment, and public meetings, which we've had tonight, all three electronically, for example, the environment committee, the list goes on. And then there's also staff attendance at council meetings and other meetings, so whether they would come in virtually or hybrid. We have had a lot better engagement at times also by being able to expand our wings a little bit by having people come in virtually from just not locally, but from other parts of Ontario and Canada to participate. One thing before I turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor, about getting comments and questions is that we are a small organization, and our ability to react on the fly, so to speak. We do the best we can, but it's tough in a small organization if we get requests at the last minute to adapt. We're going to find out in a hurry how we're doing when we have our first meeting, and we know there'll be growing pains and that we'll have to adjust a little bit. So those are some things for council to think about, and I'll turn it back over to you for questions and or comments.
Thanks very much, Mr. CAO. I certainly have some comments, but I'll hold mine till the end. I see Councillor McDonnell had his hand up.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mills, for the presentation. I guess I've put some thought into it, and I've had a conversation with Councillor Lang, and I think kind of where my head is at on this is I'd like to see say a number like 2 thrown out, 2 no questions asked, that you're allowed to do by say Zoom into a meeting as a member of council or a general manager. Anything over that, I think it'd be wise to have it at the discretion of the mayor to be able to maybe make that decision, or the CAO or whoever's at that point. The other thing I would like to see as well is that also go for, say, general managers and anybody making a presentation. I don't say that every staff member, if you aren't on the agenda or you're not going to be planning on speaking, maybe you don't have to necessarily be in the room. Thinking back to the first couple of years of council, that we generally had just our general managers unless somebody else was presenting. And the Zoom could be a good option for those to maybe be encouraged to hang on in case they're called on, or for delegations and presentations from whether it's from consultants or from members of the public if they'd prefer to not come in. But I think for our staff, it'd be nice if they were there for the meetings. As far as committees, I'm not sure. I think it's a double-sided knife that way for me. So I haven't really formulated a good opinion on that. So I look forward to maybe hearing somebody else's. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Mr. Mills, for the presentation, the report. I am a firm believer that if possible, we should meet in person. I think that's the way it was intended to work, and I think that we should try to get back to it as much as possible. But it has been quite something to see what can happen when you do virtual. It's exciting to see the amount of people that have been able to participate. When you see the views of our council meeting, it's hundreds of % higher than what we would have normally had for most of those meetings. So I'm grateful that that staff has figured out a way that we can still continue to broadcast these meetings. I think that's important, and I'm okay with us having people come in virtually once in a while. I don't know what to say about how many. I do want it. I don't want it to get to be a bit of a crutch where they just say, "Oh, it's easier to do it virtually. I'm just not going to show up." But so I don't know. Like Mr. McDonald said, 2 meetings a year sort of thing. Whether we hold it to that or we just see how it works out. I'm not sure where to go there, but I hope that we can have as much in person as possible with continuing to broadcast everything and make it available to the public. As far as committees, I think maybe some of both. I know there's sometimes a committee meets just to discuss maybe one item that's not a huge thing. You hate to have to get everybody to show up at a location to have a 15-minute meeting to discuss one item, where you could do that virtually. Or maybe if you have a committee meeting that's going to go for 2 or 3 hours, maybe it would be better to meet in person. So, and the other one that you had asked about was staff attendance. I enjoy it when staff shows up at meetings because it's one of the few times we get a chance to maybe have a brief visit before and after the meeting, get to know our staff a little bit more. There's likely new staff in the office that I may not have even met yet in the last 2 years if they haven't been at the office very much, and it's kind of nice to meet them at some point. Maybe when if things open up a little more, we talked about a staff barbecue or something. So hopefully something like that can happen this summer. Maybe we'll see how it goes. I guess those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Warden. I'm very much of the mind of flexibility being important. I think it's both important in terms of, well, maybe I'll back up. Definitely, we need to keep live streaming. I mean, as you've already mentioned, CEO Mills, the media coverage we get is much more fulsome, and I think that contributes very much to the transparency of what we're doing. And as you've noted, also we have lots of residents watching. So I think, regardless, that's something we need to keep doing. With respect to how people can participate, I think flexibility is very important. I think that helps make being a member of council more accessible for more people. And because some folks have different constraints. Some people have health issues. I know in other elected offices, they've had folks who've had serious health issues where they've had to, they would have had to step down if they weren't able to participate electronically. But they were still able to fully participate. They just could not be there in person. So I think a hybrid model is something that I think is very important. In terms of having rules around that, I think it's better, rather than trying to imagine all the wild scenarios that could occur that could cause someone to want to be virtual more than another. I think it's better to not go down that path and impose like stricter rules. I mean, unless that's what residents come back to us and say. But I think if this is how we're starting, I think it's best to start with something flexible, and then if it seems to be abused, then to modify how it goes forward. And same thing with when it goes to staff as well. I think I'm very comfortable virtually. I mean, I do so much work virtually as well that I think it's important to have a relationship with the folks, but once you have a relationship, I don't think it's necessary to see folks in person regularly. So, I mean, I probably leave that up to the discretion of the managers on who needs to be present. Certainly, if we're having in-person meetings, I think my expectation was that the CAO would be there, but apart from that, I think it's there's a certain amount of discretion that is makes sense. With respect to committees, I think in terms of complexity for staff, I think having hybrid committee participation is probably that's probably too complicated for staff or not worth the extra effort for staff to run, because I recognize it is more complicated to do hybrid. But I know, for example, the Environment Committee, I think folks are very comfortable with it being virtual. I think it allows us to have more regular meetings conduct more business more routinely, but I recognize that might not be appropriate for other committees, and so they might want to meet in person. But so I think flexibility is important, but I would think that hybrid is too much to ask for committees. And another point I was thinking about is in terms of scheduling, where we could do them. I don't want to put more restrictions on Tartan Hall if that's where committees would be meeting. I know they can meet elsewhere, but I wouldn't want to put more restrictions on Tartan Hall in terms of availability. Because then I think it becomes too difficult to manage, or maybe not too difficult, but I think it's, let's try to just limit, the usage to council night when it's not recreation type activities. So, those are the comments that I would like to make on this one. So thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Jaworski. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Rather than reiterating what everyone has said, I fully agree with my fellow council members. I believe that there's a lot of good that came out of seeing this electronic version of council meetings, and to go to a hybrid model. I think that would be very beneficial in that I do believe that they're meant to be in person. And I would strongly encourage everyone to be in person, but as everyone said, there's extenuating circumstances that don't allow people to come in. The only thing that I still question is putting a number on the amount of times that you might need to attend virtually. I don't know if I have a number in my mind, in that I think everyone should be encouraged to attend in person. However, if it's being abused, I think then it needs to be looked at, but to put a number, I can't really say at this time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So my comments are, I certainly am in favor of amending the bylaw to permit a hybrid model. My whole thing is more about public safety than anything else. We all have families. Some of us have children, grandchildren, and kids are always getting sick for whatever reason. And so my thoughts are that if you're at home and someone in your family is sick, well, you should be able to participate and not have to worry about spreading the germs. From that perspective, I would not want to put a cap on it. And I certainly think that this is I've said it before, we have living, breathing documents. So I'd like to see us amend it to permit a hybrid model and then, reevaluate it in a year's time. It'll be a new council. The 5 of us, I think, desire in-person meetings to be the primary, you go to the meeting, but there are times when things happen. And I think we need to be a little bit flexible. And I think also, this is our part-time job, right? So sometimes things happen during the day that are out of our control. Sam and Martin, spring and fall are tight for you guys. I'm sure, you're rushing to get to the meeting, and Councillor Lang, how you said today, in that time of year, having an extra 2 hours in the field, if it was you could do it from home, it could be the difference between making money that day and losing money. So I certainly feel there needs to be flexibility. And I also feel like, there needs to be understanding that you can cross the line. So those are my comments. And that goes for staff as well. And I'll circle back to Councillor McDonnell, and then we'll move on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and no, I do remember one particular event where I went in, took off my coveralls, got into my suit, and then put them back on and went back to work at at night. But no, for sure, there's definitely a great opportunity. And like I say, the only reason I suggested a number or some kind of limit to it, or a permission factor, was more or less that we attempt to plan it. I know some things come up out of nowhere, but develop throughout the day, as you said, all our part-time jobs. But just, I think, a question for the clerk as far as, what is reasonable notice? Say, obviously there's foreseen incidents, but if I know I'll be out of town on business for something at a conference, is it 24 hours, or I guess as much notice as possible? But I think the question for the clerk would be, what's the cutoff for getting that as well, if there is one? I know we don't want to be bothering you at 4 p.m. on a council day to get us set up for a hybrid.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think once we have the setup complete, we've got all the technology in place, I'm confident it's going to be a fairly easy process once it's all set up. We're actually meeting with IT at Tartan Hall tomorrow to finalize a lot of that tech setup. So I think, 24, 48 hours is a reasonable notice to let us know if you're going to be participating virtually. And this is going to be new for all of us. So there may be some bumps in the road as we get this new technology, new setup in place. But overall, I think once the technology is in place, then I wouldn't be overly concerned about a notice period. But then again, that may change as we get into things and learn how it's going to function. It might be a trial and error type situation at first.
For sure. And you know what? We've worked really well together over the last 4 years and a few months for Councillor Luck. But I really don't think that there's anybody here that's going to be abusing it and causing a bit of grief. One question that I did have from Councillor McDonnell's comment to you, Madame Campo, is what if there's inclement weather? So let's say it's December, it's winter, and there's like a snowstorm. What is your obligations to notify the public that, let's say, council was supposed to meet at the Tartan Hall 7 o'clock, but there's freezing rain, or there's, what's the cutoff, so that we say, okay, you know what, for public safety, everybody's gonna zoom in from home. Are there obligations that you're aware of, or can we just put a notice on social media and on our website that due to the weather, meeting is going to be electronic?
That's a great question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, that is something that we can establish again through the procedural bylaw. So we could make that decision and make an amendment to the bylaw. I believe actually there's something in there currently about inclement weather and you know, when we cancel a meeting, but that could be an amendment where we could say in this instance, at the discretion of the mayor, we will hold the meeting virtually and will provide notice in this manner and specify that in the procedural bylaw.
Perfect. I think that's something that we should examine, because I mean, now that we have the ability to like send staff home early that day, and then everybody can just zoom in. So I think that'd be good if we reviewed that as well.
Perfect.
Okay, Deputy Mayor for the final question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Warden. No, I'd just like to put my hand up and say, if you want a guinea pig to do a trial run, or, I mean, I think it would be good to even maybe more of us to do a trial run just to make sure everyone is comfortable, and also maybe when it comes to the hybrid, because they've allowed hybrid a few times at the counties, and sometimes, you know, there's been some hiccups to iron out even there. So I think it might make sense, and I'm certainly happy to participate in that.
Thank you.
I think that's, no, it's okay. I think that's a great idea, but I would recommend let's get a couple of in-person under our belts before we do that, if you don't mind, and because I'm sure it's going to be an adjustment for all of us. So.
And if I might add as well, through you, Mr. Mayor, we're meeting tomorrow with IT to finalize the setup, and then next week we're actually going to be holding our weekly managers meeting at Tartan Hall to practice the technology staff-wise, so that staff can get a little bit more familiar with the technology that we'll be using for the live stream and setting up the cameras and everything. So we're going to be doing a bit of a trial run internally, and that's something we can certainly look at doing with council as well at some point.
Okay, great. Good discussion. So just so everyone's on the same page, we are in favor of amending the bylaw to permit hybrids, and then we can have a further discussion when in the near future. Can I just get a thumbs up? Okay, perfect. So Mr. Mills, pretty clear direction. We would like to proceed with amending the bylaw to permit hybrid meetings, and then we could maybe review some of the things that we discussed this evening.
Okay, we'll work with staff and we'll come back to you in a future meeting soon. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. So moving on to 7DI, water loss update. Who is Mr. Segay? Yep. Oh, Miss McDonald. Okay. So it was either Councillor Lang or Councillor Deputy Mayor Jaworski to request that to be pulled.
I think it was both of us.
Me too.
And I assume that you would be in there as well, Mr. Mayor, because you've been pushing this quite hard. So thank you for the chance to speak to it, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and Ms. McDonald and Mr. Segay, thank you for both being on. Just not a lot to say. It looks like you guys are on top of it, and we've got a game plan. Just thanking you for doing it and getting this out to us. I'm assuming you do mention Glen Walter, Lancaster, and Green Valley, but I'm hoping you put the majority of your effort into Glen Walter, just because we are in a tight situation there with our availability. So, but thanks for putting this together, and I'm glad to see that it's moving forward.
Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
Ditto. Thank you.
Okay, good. I had a few other comments. I'm hoping that some of the timelines, I know I may be pushing a little harder, but I'd like to see every single house in Glen Walter inspected this year to make sure that they're compliant with the sump pumps. And I mean, this is a perfect time of year. I'm sure we were over our limits today, the last couple of days with all the water. I'm sure we were. And I mean, my sump pump was running here for the first time So I'm just thinking of folks who are in lower areas closer to the river. So, you know, and I mean, the bylaw is there and it's included that they're not allowed to do that. And it's very clear, it's been on the books since 2016. So I think we need to step up that aspect of it. I don't think, you know, we gotta make it so that the residents understand it's a very, very serious issue. Because if we can clear up, you know, 10% of the loss, it's good. We can maybe be at zero instead of in the negative. I don't want to be in the plus. I'm happy to be at zero. So I'm hoping that we can maybe figure out a way to get that done this year. Because I really think that it's dire there, and I'd like to see something like that done if possible. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Dylan. You had your hand up.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I definitely believe we can tackle the sump pumps and the water meters in this year that is our plan.
Perfect. Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, moving on to 7DL. What are we here? Ministry of Northern Development Mines. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And just scrolling to get to page 162. And I don't have a lot to say on this. I just noticed that the ministry was looking for comments. It seems as though they're interested in making some regulations to deal with floating accommodations. I think it's something that maybe there does need to be some regulations. I guess we have a couple floating accommodations in our township now, and I don't think there's very many rules around it. I mean, the potential is there for someone to build some type of you know, floating mini house or something like this. Park it potentially right in front of somebody's, you know, $2 or $3 million home and leave it there, and there would be nothing. There's no rules around it. So, and I haven't heard of any big conflicts as of this point, but maybe there are. I don't know, but I just think that if ministry is looking to do this, and then we have a lot of waterfront property in our township, that maybe we should make some comments. And I mentioned it to Ms. Haley that it's likely it would be her department that would make the comments. I just wanted to see what the rest of council thought of that, and if they were interested in us putting some comments forward. And you know, I don't have an opinion one way or the other which way to go. I just thought it was interesting. It was for information only, but I just brought it forward so I make sure everybody's aware of it and see whether we should act upon it.
Certainly, I certainly concur, Councillor Lang. It's certainly, I know we have a couple in Glen Walter. I can see them when you're driving. There's two, I believe there's two barges behind. So, Ms. Haley, do you have anything to add to that? I think it's interesting that they're asking for these comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's common for the ministry to reach out when they're anticipating new legislation or contemplating new legislation. So we can definitely put something together. It's been quite some time since I've been on the Environmental Bill of Rights. I believe we have to type in our comments, but I'll re-review that. And in my opinion, I believe that it should be something the province regulates. I'm hoping that they don't download it to municipalities. Currently, the province regulates docks and boathouses within the water jurisdiction, anything that's over 15 square meters. So I think if they treat it very similarly to docks and boathouses, that would be beneficial to most municipalities. And we don't have jurisdiction over the waterway now. So downloading it to a municipality would be a concern for us in terms of what we need to learn, the liability, extra work for the municipal employees, etc.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And the last one was 7DP. Sorry. And that is resolution Town of Mono, Prime Minister's support for Ukraine. Deputy Mayor Jaworski.
not sure if.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden, for letting me to speak to this one. I'll be honest, it's a little bit difficult for me to speak to it. The situation in Ukraine is unimaginable, really. My grandmother was Ukrainian. Her parents came over, sort of that large wave of Ukrainian immigrants in the early 1900s. So we're part of that large Ukrainian diaspora. You'll hear that the largest number of Ukrainians outside of Ukraine after Russia is in Canada. Also, my father was 12 in Warsaw when the Nazis started bombing Warsaw. So this is war, the implications of war, and particularly in that region of the world, is something that I've grown up with. And so to see what's happening right now in Ukraine, it's devastating to think these are folks who are living just like you and I. I mean, you even probably heard the stories of where they've kidnapped the mayors of some of the local towns on the eastern border. So it's just mind-boggling. So, and there's not, I mean, I'll be honest, there's not much that we as a municipality can do, but I think it's important to express support for our government to support the people of Ukraine as much as is possible, and hope that our leaders are inspired to help bring this conflict to resolution as soon as possible. So this resolution speaks to supporting our federal government in their efforts and doing what they can to put pressure on Putin to end the war, and also it suggests flying the Ukrainian flag. I know this is something we looked at in the past of getting another flagpole at the Township building, and if that is, I think that would be this would be an appropriate use for it, and so I'd like to propose that we do that, please.
Okay, I certainly, Mr. Mills.
Just to that point, Mr. Mayor, through you, we have 2 flagpoles on order, one for the main office and one for the arena, for exactly what, not just the reason of Ukraine, but there are times where we are asked or do actually put resolutions forward to fly a flag. So they are on order. Also, to the point with Deputy Mayor Jaworski, there have been other municipalities who have done a release, a press release, or put something on the website, just encouraging constituents that, or showing them where the areas are they can donate to, or organizations they can donate to, so that people have options on a list. So we can certainly do that if there's a request on that.
Okay, Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It makes you feel helpless because there's not a lot we can do. But I mean, this is a pretty minor thing, but I would like to back up what Councillor or Deputy Mayor Jaworski is saying, and second it if there's a seconder needed, that we support this and we do whatever we can. And if nothing else, even just making this public statement that we're supporting the people of Ukraine, and that we know there's not a lot we can do, but we do encourage our government to continue to do all that they possibly can.
Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? So, Madam Clerk, you'll bring this back at our next council meeting for to pass. Okay, that sounds good, and it's great to know that we have those flagpoles on order, and I certainly have no issue with supporting this. So, thank you for bringing that forward, Deputy Major Jaworski. I know it's not something that's easy to talk about, so thank you for doing that. Okay, that concludes this portion. So moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Martin Lang. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of South Glengarry accept the items presented on the agenda as committee reports and for information purposes only. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. And moved by Martin Lang, second by Rebecca Luck. Be it resolved that council convene to close session at 9:14 p.m. to discuss the following item pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which if disclosed could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or negotiations of a person, group, or persons of organization, specifically labor relations matter. All those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried. So thank you all for coming to our meeting this evening.